All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good evening. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight in a webinar, part of SPE-KSA webinar series, and actually IT's first webinar with one of our very own Abdulrahman name, SPE-KSA IT chairperson. Before we start, and would not be long, I would appreciate if you could answer these following polls to give us a sense of who is attending. Excellent. We see a lot of non-members. We hopefully after this you change your mind and join SPE-KSA, one of the largest SPE international sections in the world after North America. The second webinar, the second poll, I'm sorry, is asking how many people are joining you tonight to get a better sense of how many people actually watching. Thank you for chipping in. We really hope you and your family are all safe and sound. Before I turn it over to Abdulrahman, just a few housekeeping items. Please submit all of your questions in the Q&A box. Avoid submitting them in the chat box. Would be difficult for us to track them. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Abdulrahman. Abdulrahman.
Thank you, Nasser. Let me turn on video and start sharing my screen. Nasser, I think you need to enable screen sharing.
You can try again.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Nasser. And I'd like to welcome all of you. This presentation came up to me a few years ago. I was thinking, what is the best way to basically, there's always this question, hackers are always one step of us. Hackers are always one step ahead. And I've never thought of to beat a criminal, you have to be basically a criminal. And that's how I came across the idea of think like a hacker. Obviously, there's a lot of people else doing it, but there are different ways of doing it. What I'm doing today is to sharing with you what is the simplest way to basically get into this state of mind of hackers. So before getting into this, thank you, Nasser already introduced me. I'm a security operations manager. My team monitors for threats and respond to incidents. I have experience in different areas, including governance, risk and compliance, security systems, penetration testing. I hold a number of certificates, CISSP, CISM, CRISC, Certified Ethical Hacker. I've also competed in a number of competitions in SANS, which is one of the training centers, one of the most popular training centers, and in DEF CON, which is one of the most popular security conferences in the world. It's held every year in Vegas. Obviously, this year it will be online, but I attended a couple of times. Last one was 2 years ago. I have a number of papers published. Last year I had 3 papers, and I had a course on Cybersecurity. If you have the time, you can go and visit cybersecurity.it. It has free resources if you're interested into getting into cybersecurity, or you want to learn more about any cyber-related topic. I've received a lot of criticism before about my theme. It's black, it's dark, and it's in green. It's not good for your eyes, but I've always used this quote that said basically we're hackers and we have black terminals with green font colors. So this is why my theme might not be as colorful as some people want. Before getting into my presentation, what is information security? My own definition of information security is managing risk. At the end, risk is always there. If you leave your home going anywhere, to the supermarket or anywhere, there's just obviously nowadays the risk is much higher with COVID-19, but even in a typical safe day, you still have a risk. But in information security, the idea is to manage risk in order to preserve the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information assets. That includes data sources, data assets, and computers in general. Actually, even physical security is part of cyber. When we talk about information security, physical security is one of them. And this is one of the controls. How do we preserve the confidentiality, integrity, and availability? We use technical controls, administrative controls, and physical controls. Technical controls can be something like a firewall, antivirus, something like that. Administrative controls is generally policies, regulations, governing documents. And finally, physical dispensers, cameras, card basically readers, etc. So why do people get into hacking? Hacking is extremely lucrative. 71%, according to the Verizon data breach report, 71% of breaches were financially motivated. It creates a faster, more effective, and more efficient criminal profit. You don't need to physically go out and basically attack someone to get it. It's safer than physical crimes. Sometimes it's worse, but knowing hackers and looking at them in DEF CON, they're not physically capable actually of doing a physical attack. The last estimate that I read, cybercrime cost would reach 6 trillion by 2021, and COVID-19 is actually helping reach this basically the cost. So I said basically hacking is a lucrative business, but a good report that discusses this was issued by McAfee a few years ago actually. How much do they make from hacking? Obviously, the easiest way or the most popular way, and that everyone knows about it, is selling credit cards. Basically, if you can sell credit cards starting at $5 with random payment card numbers up to $45. Someone might think $45 is not really worth it. However, if you look at basically the attack that happened on Target a few years ago, there was 110 million customers compromised, 40 million credit cards info. If you multiply this by the United States Food Fills info figure, that goes up to 1.2 billion US dollars. And that's a lot of money for 3 months work. The other way of making money is ransomware. We've saw this a few years ago. Someone sends a virus or a malware, and it encrypts your device. It basically locks it and asks you for payment. It can go from $500. In a case, it went up to $800,000 based on obviously the target. Another example of making money is RATs, which is remote administration tools. And this can go from 15 to 50. What this does basically, I install it on someone's machine. I have no use to it. However, someone might want to use it. So I sell it to him for basically $15 to $50. Obviously, I've never done this, but basically there's a lot of bad people out there. Zombie viruses is another example. Zombie viruses is just like a virus. However, it allows an attacker to use other users' machines to attack the target. So instead of attacking from one single source, he would use 5,000 zombies instead. Finally, mercenaries, you can actually pay someone, murtazaqa basically, to $150, and they'll go ahead and work with you on hacking basically the target that you're rushing for. So the first section of my presentation, I talk about the history of hacking. But before we get into this, I have a poll to see what do you guys think. When do you think was the first hack? 1903, 1973, 1985, or 1994? Actually, I'm surprised that 16 people said 1903. It was actually, yes, 1903 is correct. It was the first communication hack. It wasn't cyber attack, it was a communication hack. And what happened was Marconi was an inventor. He invented what was supposedly a secure wireless telegraph technology. And basically what he said is he can tune his instrument. So no other instrument is similarly tuned, can tap into this message. What he's saying basically is he's using radio and he's tuning his instrument to a setting that only him and the recipient know about. Obviously, there's no security here. Anyone that can guess or tune to this channel will be able to hear his communication. The Eastern Telegraph Company employed Mascaline. Mascaline was a scientist / magician. I guess this was the previous name of hackers. And his job was to prove Marconi's technology is not really secure. And the Eastern Telegraph had wires all over Europe, and basically a wireless telegraph technology would render their investments useless. So John Ambrose Fleming was working with Marconi, and he was demonstrating the technology, the new communication technology in London. Mascaline was able to break the confidentiality and integrity, two of the three pillars of cybersecurity, or the things that we're trying to preserve. He was able to listen to the communication coming from Marconi, and he was able to tap over this secured line and sent insulting code. What he said basically, he said the rats fighting 5 times, and then he sent lines of Shakespeare's Henry V. He wasn't a hacker, I guess. Magician / scientist is not the hacker name. They were called scientific hooligans, and it was all over the news the next day. Nowadays, we have something called responsible disclosure. If someone discovers a vulnerability in a system, he's expected to notify the system developer or support to fix it, and give them enough time to do so. If they do not fix it by that time, he can go ahead and share his finding. Moving on to 1939, where hacking won wars. And during the World War II, Germany used the Enigma machine. And if you guys are fans of movies and watch The Imitation Game, it talks about this incident. What Germans used to do, they used to encode the message using keys that change on a daily basis. there were 186 million combination. It was almost impossible to break without using technology. And this combination would change on a daily basis. The United Kingdom hired this guy, the father of computer science, and Alan Turing was assigned to break basically the Enigma machine. Till this day, we use Turing's name when describing computer science. There's a Turing test, Turing machine, and so on. What Turing did basically, they noticed that the daily weather broadcast changed on a daily basis. They had a single format. They had the wind speed, they had the atmospheric pressure and the temperature. So Turing noticed that he had the input and he has the output. He just needs to find the middle ground. Before the computer, before the Turing machine, they used to use educated guess to understand it. However, it took too many man hours to break this, and the code would change before they actually find the previous code. Alan Turing invented the bomb, the first computer, to break this. It was working on trial and error until it gets, so basically they feed it the input that they get and the output that they already know, and then it uses trial and error until the message is deciphered. After that, in 1979, the first computer system hack, and that was Kevin Mitnick. Kevin Mitnick broke into major computer systems. He hacked into the ARC, the digital equipment, basically operating system. He was able to, he was sentenced after that to 12 months in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Near the end of his supervised release, he hacked into Bell voicemail computers and went back to jail. Kevin Mitnick gained unauthorized access to dozens of network. He used cloned cellular phone to hide his location. He copied software information from companies, and he stole computer passwords, altered computer networks, and broke into and read private emails. Kevin Mitnick since then have moved to the white hat side, and I actually met him 2 years ago in black hat, and I got this signed copy of his book. He's very popular now in cybersecurity, and he's the, I guess, a rock star in cybersecurity. In 1988, the first malicious code came out, the Morse worm. It was developed by a student in Cornell University. It was launched from a computer system at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It was the first felony conviction on the 1986 Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. He was dismissed out of Cornell, sent to 3 years on probation, and fined $10,000. The way it worked, obviously keeping in mind that this was way before antivirus was invented, the way it worked, it would check if the system was infected. If it's yes, infected, it would move on. If no, it would infect. The solution was the grandfather of our current antivirus softwares, was to run a process that would answer yes all the time. After that, the I love you worm was one of the first worms to spread over the internet. It was a Visual Basic script, and then it would get access to your address book and then send an email with the attachment to all of your to all of the people in your address book. In 2010, the Stuxnet worm was deployed. It was a major cybersecurity incident. They were able to get into an airtight network, basically a network that was not connected to the internet, using USB, basically using one of the contractors that goes in and out of the facility. In 2012, we had a major event here in Saudi Arabia. Looking at the event in hindsight, I honestly, we can look at it in two ways. Me being the optimist that I am, I guess there's a lot of good that came out of this attack. We had the National Cybersecurity Federation, the authority, the Cybersecurity Federation. We had a number of people getting into cybersecurity. We have a huge number of cybersecurity professionals now in the kingdom. We're way ahead of many other countries. It wouldn't have happened, or it would have happened later, eventually, I guess, but it wouldn't have happened if not of this attack. In 2014, Yahoo was attacked, and the reason why Yahoo is here is because of the size. 3 billion users were basically compromised. Their data was out there. To put this into perspective, this is the top 10, excluding Yahoo, attacks by the number of records exposed. If we add Yahoo to it, this happens. The huge size of the Yahoo attack just makes everything look small and insignificant. Finally, in 2017, WannaCry happened. WannaCry was a ransomware. In February 2017, the vulnerability was leaked. It was called the Samba vulnerability. What the vulnerability allows them, the solution to vulnerability was found a few days later. A patch was released by Microsoft in March 14th, and in April, WannaCry starts spreading. When we talk about patching your system, updating your system, do not skip updates. This is why we don't. This is the reason. WannaCry infected 300,000 machines. Obviously, if these machines were patched, they wouldn't have been basically vulnerable, and WannaCry would not have worked on them. Finally, into 2020, TravelX, that was a few months ago, earlier this year, there was a security incident. TravelX has 1,200 branches across, I think, 70 countries. Their online systems were all offline. You had to go to the branch to do any transfer or any money exchange. So why is cybersecurity so hard? Why do we always say cybersecurity is hard? Cybersecurity is not a technical problem. The rules of cybersecurity are different from those of the physical world. Cybersecurity laws, policies, and practices are not yet fully developed. We're not there yet. Every country has a different rule. Every country has a different regulation. So these are basically the main reasons why cybersecurity can be considered difficult and requires a lot of talent to address. So moving on to the cyber kill chain. The cyber kill chain was developed by Lockheed Martin a few years ago. It was built on top of the kill chain, the army kill chain, or the armed forces kill chain. The idea here is they looked at major attacks that occurred, and they went back and put it into phases. And they found out that there are 7 phases. Obviously, there's a more advanced cyber kill chain out there. However, I think this basically serves the purpose for understanding how a kill chain, or understanding how a hacker thinks and acts. So there's 7 stages. Starts with reconnaissance, ends with action and objective. Why do we look at this, and why do I always say think like a hacker? Is because each stage, although it's used by the hacker, it presents opportunities to detect and react. So the first step is reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is where we gather information. We collect as many information as we can. Honestly speaking, this is the most important step out there. The more information you get about people, the more the rest of basically the attack would be easier. There are multiple ways of doing it. You can do it through people, technology, and process. There are 2 types of reconnaissance: passive and active. And when we talk about passive, we're talking about looking for publicly available information on the internet. So what we're doing is we're looking across the internet. We're looking, if we're attacking a company, we're looking at where are the server hosted, where are the, what websites do they have? And if we're looking at basically social, we look at LinkedIn. So a lot of people post a lot of information on LinkedIn, information that should not be there. As an example, if someone posts on LinkedIn that he is an expert in, as an example, Cisco firewall, most probably the company that he works for uses Cisco firewall. A hacker would basically wait until a Cisco vulnerability appears on one of their firewalls and then try to hack the company using this vulnerability. So basically pay attention to what you post on LinkedIn. Finally, physical, although disgusting, but it happens. Dumpster diving is where people jump into into someone's dumpster and try to find valuable information. As an example, if you receive bank information through mail and you throw it out without basically shredding it, someone can basically get it and call you and act as if he was the bank. He would give you your account number, he would give you your address, the amount of money you have in your bank, what are the last 3 transactions that you did, and would honestly seems legitimate. The other example of the other type of reconnaissance is the active reconnaissance. Here where we start interacting with the systems. So vulnerability scanning is one of them. Another example is communication on LinkedIn. And I've seen this here in the kingdom where a number of employees of one company received messages on LinkedIn. The messages said basically, we have a job offer for you. If you're interested, communicate back to us. And they went back and forth. They got what kind of systems do they have in the app, in the company that he works for. And later on, after basically building trust, they sent him a link on his email. And I'm going to show you later today in my presentation why is that not a very good thing. So we move on from reconnaissance. Now that we gathered all the information that we have, we know what kind of weapons we want to use. And by weapons, I mean basically payloads, malicious payloads, like a malicious software that would help us attack basically the system that we want to attack. And this is a fairly passive step because it all happens on this on the hacker side. There's no interaction with the victim or the target at all at this step. Third is delivery, where the payload that was developed in phase 2 is sent to the victim. Obviously, the information that we used during the reconnaissance would help a lot here. So if we did vulnerability assessment and we found an open FTP service, we might be able to drop our payload through it. If we went with social as an example, the example that I said, where we build the trust with the user, we can send him this by email and find it physically. And I've actually went through physical delivery. Basically, as a penetration testing, we developed a number of USBs and we threw them, we dropped them in different places at a company that I worked for. And we wrote them bonuses for, I think it was 2010 or something like that. And from there, we waited and waited and waited until one connected the USB to his machine. Obviously, we're not malicious. However, this went to the company's report. Number 4 is exploitation. We move to hacking now. Now that basically our code is running, it's working, it's beyond the strict firewalls and IPSs and all of these fancy names were in the company or in the system. There's a saying in cybersecurity, our systems, our environments are hard to crunchy from the outside, yet soft and chewy from the inside. When you are inside an environment, you can almost always access any system out there. So moving on from exploitation, we move to installation. The malicious file is installing, it's moving across the environment. Finally, we move to command and control. Now that my malware or my target is beyond their cybersecurity controls, we start actioning, or we start controlling our malware. The first way is RATS, this one that I talked about earlier, remote administration tool. The second one is IRC protocol, because IRC protocol runs on a different protocol than web. So it's not really monitored a lot. And yes, it's MIRC, if you remember MIRC, it's the same protocol as what we used to basically chat on a few years ago, actually a lot of years ago. The last example was honestly extremely creative, and this is a real example. Someone used a Twitter feed to attack a company. So basically his payload would log in into Twitter and read tweets by the hacker, decrypt them, and run them on his behalf. This went on for, I think, 2 years without anyone noticing, because everyone is looking at the traffic and it looks legitimate. Someone is going to Twitter and looking at tweets, nothing wrong there. However, it took them 2 years to discover it, which was a bit too late. So the final step is action on objective. The attacker is already there. He starts looking at the goal. He starts looking at what he wants, and this can take months. In the target example, it took them 3 months. In another example, it took 2 years. Target was basically accessed, or the previous steps were achieved in September. However, they did not action on objective until end of the year, because they knew that Thanksgiving is coming, and after that, Christmas is coming, and people shop around this time, and they got the 40 million credit cards. This can take months. You want to take small steps, nothing too aggressive, because you don't want them to detect you. Basically depends on the objective. If it's financial, that's payment history, logging data. If it's espionage, you can basically stop a service, or basically freeze a system, copy data out there. If none of this works, you can ransom the system and ask for a payment to basically unencrypt or give them back access to their data. I said before that every step gives us an opportunity to detect. What we do is basically we put the steps in a matrix, and the other side we add detect, prevent, disrupt, degrade, and deceive. And then we start adding controls one by one to ensure that in every step, regardless where the hacker is, we have a way to detect them, we have a way to prevent them, we have a way to disrupt them, we have a way to degrade them, basically reduce the effect of what they're doing, and finally to deceive them. Give them access to a system that looks legitimate, looks looks basically interesting to them, and let them access data that is basically has no value. So as an example, if we look at prevention at the, let's say, weaponization, or let's say a delivery, one of the controls is intrusion prevention system. Another control is firewall, installing firewall. A third way of doing this is network traffic management. There's a lot of different things that people can do in order to basically prevent this delivery from happening. Obviously, we always talk about layered defense. If one step or one phase basically was successful, we have to make sure that there are enough controls across that would prevent them from moving on to the next, or the basically step after that. I love this saying. Basically, Robert Mueller said there are 2 types of companies in the world: the one that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. As I said, I love this quote. However, this to me is much, much better. There are 2 types of companies in the world: those who have been hacked and those who don't know yet that they've been hacked. And this was by the CEO of Cisco. So we're moving away from my dark basically theme, and we're moving to the final note. Please note that you're not immune. None of us is immune. Everyone can be hacked. Always think before clicking. Phishing is extremely serious. I'm going to show you a demo in a minute. How easy is it to create a phishing attack? Always think, look at the link, copy it and put it in a, there's a lot of good sources out there. VirusTotal is one of them. You can paste the link and it will tell you if it's malicious or not. McAfee has a similar service. There's a lot of services out there that would tell you if a link is legitimate or not. Use strong passwords. Enable 2-factor authentication. If it's there, enable it. Strong passwords are extremely important. However, if you enable 2-factor authentication, it makes life a lot more difficult to hackers. So when we talk about passwords, if I use the password, if we're talking about brute forcing or basically trial and error, If your password is password, this would take around a minute to break. If your password is password with a capital P, this would take around 5 hours. If your password is password with a number, that would take around a month. If you add special characters, this will take it up to 6 years. And finally, if you exceed 12 characters or 10 characters, that would take up to 3 trillion years. Obviously, don't use password, but because there's different ways of attacking passwords. It's not always try and error. Sometimes they use dictionary attacks, and I can promise you all of these are there. However, just to give you an idea what kind of difference does adding caps, numbers, and special characters would do to a password. So we move on to the second poll of the day and the last one. How long will it take, knowing this information, how long will it take to hack your password? Okay, for those that answer, I'd rather not say. You guys are ready. I can't teach you anything more. You can sign out. The rest, I hope you guys have nothing to do today because we're going to start over. But yeah, a few years is not bad, assuming that you change your password every 3 months. Because basically, by the time he reaches the password, you'd have a new one. Okay, so moving on to updates. As I said before, when the WannaCry happened, if your system was up to date, you wouldn't have been compromised, you wouldn't have been attacked, you wouldn't have been ransomed. Always keep the updates. Don't skip it. I know it takes a couple of minutes, sometimes more than a couple, but always update it. You're not, basically, there's the reason they're updating, there's the reason they're changing. You always have to keep up with the updates. Use security products, anti-malware, firewall, they're extremely important. Even if you use a Mac, it's a good idea to install anti-malware and firewall, especially firewall, but anti-malware is also important. Some people say Macs are not vulnerable to viruses. This is not actually true. It's just most of the viruses are developed for the Windows systems because Windows dominates the market, and most companies, basically the targets that matter, use Windows. But even if you use a Mac, always use anti-malware because hackers notice this and they know people don't use anti-malware on Mac. That's why it's easier for them to attack. Beware of the Wi-Fi you're connecting to. A lot of people go out to hotels, cafes, and basically other places, and the first thing that they do is look for Wi-Fi, which honestly speaking is one of the things that we expect when we check into a hotel or we go to a cafe. However, it's not really secure. The Wi-Fi that you're connecting to, it's like walking through a not so safe area. You keep your guards up. The same thing happens when you connect to a public Wi-Fi. Keep your guards up. Don't use it to access your basically bank account. Don't do any payments on it. Just beware. Just get basically anything that you do with caution. I know someone might say that I'm using HTTPS, it's encrypted. However, you're not really sure that the Wi-Fi that you're connecting to is provided by the hotel or the cafe. Sometimes malicious users basically fake a Wi-Fi connection just to get people to log into it and monitor their activities. Back up your data, which is basically a backup solution in case you did not update and you got hacked. If you got ransomware, the best way of doing it is not to pay the hacker, but instead go back to your data and go back to your backup and restore your data. And keep up with cybersecurity. It's not that difficult. There's a lot of good resources out there. I'm going to share it with you in the next, in a couple of slides. Keep up with the news. Always, if you have an iPhone, you can put a filter on iPhone's news. A few weeks ago, a mail application, as an example, was vulnerable to attack. Those that actually knew were able to disable it, and they were not vulnerable. The same thing goes to others, basically any other system out there. If you're using Windows, if you're using basically Android, anything out there, always keep up with cybersecurity. If you have a company, this is extremely important to you. You need to know what's going on. You need to basically be educated about cybersecurity because you never know when will you be the target. Finally, we do almost everything on our mobiles. iPhone is secure when it comes to viruses. That's absolutely true, and they're doing a good job with that. However, vulnerabilities on iPhone are kind of a lot. So you always have to keep updating, and don't jailbreak it. If you want to jailbreak your iPhone, just get an Android. You're just buying an expensive Android. If you're using an Android, although there are less vulnerabilities on Android, on average annually, obviously. However, you need to have anti-malware on your Android device. You need to have a security suite on your Android device to ensure that viruses are not, that you don't download the virus by mistake. Finally, if you're using Android, do not download anything out of the Google Play Market. Okay, so moving to the demo, what I want to show you is, I wanted to share with you an example of how easy is it to create a social engineering attack. So this is Kali Linux. Kali Linux is a tool that has a number of security basically tools. I'm going to share with you two of them today. The first thing that I want to check is I want to check my IP address, and then I'm going to move on to SET toolkit. This is the social engineering toolkit. It has a lot of features. I want to show you how easy it is. So I'm going to do a social engineering attack. There's a number of them. Spear phishing attack means that I'm going to attack a person that I know, and I know his email, I know his information. The second one is website attack vectors. I'm going to use a website to attack. And there's a number of other attacks such as wireless, QR code generation, and third-party models. So I'm going to use a website attack vectors. So we have a number of different tools that I have. It has the description here. The one that I'm going to do is the credential harvester. And what this does, I would create a website that looks legitimate. I'm going to clone it that looks legitimate, and then have someone, obviously me again, log into this website and put in my username and password. I'm going to keep my IP address, which is correct. But then I need to find a website that I'm going to use. For this example, I'm going, and because everyone here with COVID-19 is using Netflix, why not use Netflix? So I want to find the login page of Netflix. So going in here, I'm going to click on sign in. I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to move here, and I'm going to paste it. Give it a minute or two, even less than that, and hit enter. If I go to my IP, obviously I'm not gonna, for me it's, I can send an email, include this IP in it, and have someone else click on it. But for the sake of this example, this is actually hosted on my system. This is my system. This is not Netflix. It looks exactly the same, but it's not. So if I put in my username, I'm going to say example user at email.com, and I'm going to show you the password. I'm going to say password 123 and hit sign in. So if I go back here and scroll a bit, actually I don't need to scroll up. The user login name is example user at email.com. The password is password123. It has all the information that I want from the user. But this is not the scary part of phishing. This is still something that you can actually go back and fix. The other example that I wanted to show is MSF console, the Metasploit. Metasploit is one of the most popular exploitation tools out there. I'm going to use the same page. I'm not going to change it. However, I developed a payload beforehand. It takes some time, so I had to develop it. However, it's extremely automated. There's nothing really into it. And I'm going to add my payload to my page. So I'm going to say, so this is the page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, and trust me, this looks a lot difficult than it actually is. So in the body, I'm going to add an iframe to download the payload on the sorry, I think it was disconnected. So I'm going to use my other machine to log into this IP. But first, before getting into this, I'm going to create my session with Metasploit. So I'm going to use exploit interpreter reverse underscore TCP. There's looks like a spelling mistake. Exploit. Multi-handler, and I'm going to use set payload to reverse underscore TCP, set lhost, which is me, to 192.168 to my IP basically, and set lport to 4444. I'm going to check my options, and I'm going to hit exploit. And we wait. So on the other machine, I'm going to access the website. And as soon as I access the website, the hacker, the one that you actually see, has full control. There's a number of things that I can do. There's a lot of things that I can do. But I know a lot of people, what scares a lot of people is what we have over here. I can check out his mic. So let's say webcam underscore list. And luckily, this guy has a webcam. The second thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to stream his webcam. So the webcam is actually running from here. Let me copy it again, going back to my browser. And it's me again. So I'm able to access his machine. I was able to access his camera. I'm going to get a screenshot. Okay, so to look at the screenshot is saved here. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to and wait. So this is the screen of the Windows 10 machine used by the target. I was able to get a screenshot. The other thing that I can do is I can record mic. Obviously, I'm not going to do it because it will cause a lot of echo. I can take a screenshot. I can basically share his screen with me. I can basically see what he's doing. So if I do this, a sniffer is starting. I'm going to type welcome to SPE-KSA. I'm going to do it again because I think I messed it up a bit. And save. So if I type keyscan _ dump, what I'm getting is welcome to SPE-KSA. Whatever he types in, his password, his username, I can actually look at here. So I'm going to stop this. And I'm going to move on to the next thing that I can do. Obviously, there's a lot of them that I'm not going to cover all today. I think we're kind of running out of time now. One is, yes. Let me find something that is actually interesting. I can upload to his machine. I can view his where he's working. I can edit a file. I can. There's a lot of things that I can actually do. I think I can shell to his machine. Yes. So this is the user. If you notice, there's a file called the crown jewels when we took the screenshot. Let me show you the screenshot again. So this file said crown jewels, which sounds like something important. So I'm gonna look at what is stored in crown jewels. So I'm gonna say more crown jewels.txt. And it says basically top secret information. I'm handing my password here that way I can use secure password that would take trillions of years to crack because Abdulrahman told me to use a complex password. I did not tell you to store it on your machine. For that reason, I'm going to delete that file because this is not correct when it comes to security. So I think I deleted it. The other thing that I can do is I can add a message, a friendly message to my friend, the victim. So I'm going to say echo, don't store passwords in text. And I'm going to write this in a message from your hacker.txt. So if I look at this directory, there's a message from the hacker. I'm going to look what the message says, a message from your hacker.txt. And it says, don't store your password in a text. I can't show you my screen. However, there's a new file that appeared here. So these are two simple examples. It took us less than 10 minutes to go through them. Honestly, they're not the most sophisticated, but it's only 10 minutes. However, with more time, someone can encrypt the payload. They can basically use different tools and techniques. I'm just showing you the easiest ways that you can use to basically, or the hacker can use to attack. So going back to my presentation, we move on. Now that you've been hacked, there's a lot, again, going back to the previous slide where I talked about keeping up with security. This is a good resource, Have I Been Pawned? You can put in your email address and it will tell you if your email address and password was basically compromised and is available in any of the breaches out there. If you're interested in getting into cybersecurity, or if you want to get more information about cybersecurity, there's a lot of good news and updates resources. The Cybersecurity News is a great tool available on iOS and Android. You can download it. It gives you daily updates on what happened recently on cybersecurity. You can basically filter by platform or application that you're interested in. Reports, the McAfee report is extremely interesting. It's not always technical. The example that I showed earlier about the digital economy of hacking was a McAfee report. Symantec has a more technical threat report. And my favorite, honestly, is the Verizon data breach report. I wait every year for this to come out. And it's one of the few things that I actually print and read. Basically, every page of it. It's a huge document, however, it's extremely valuable. There's a lot of good podcasts out there. The Curves on Security is one of them. Security Now is a weekly audio column that discusses what happened in cybersecurity in the past week. So if you're interested in getting into cybersecurity, there's a lot of good resources again out there. Linux, basically Kali Linux, the one that I just showed you, there's 600 penetration tools. There's a lot of good resources out there that will teach you how to use it. Metasploitable is a operating system that you can hack. The sole purpose, it was developed for that purpose. So you use Kali Linux to hack Metasploitable. OWASP Web Goat, download vulnerable web application, and the Open Cybersecurity Challenge platform are basically insecure web applications that are designed to be hacked for this would allow basically penetration testers to learn more about how to hack basically applications. It's extremely easy. There's a lot of good resources out there that tells you how to do each and every step, and you can learn a lot by doing. And this is what these systems, what these applications do. Cybery is a free resource. They have some paid material. However, most of the material is free. It's available online. Cybery.it. I had the pleasure to create a course for them last year. It's called the Cyber Kill Chain. I discussed the kill chain that I discussed today, however, in details. And today we covered, I think, the kill chain in 20 minutes. In the course, I cover it in 3 hours. I take every step and I go and show an example on Kali Linux how to do it. Finally, the open security training has 63 days of open source class material. You can go there, you can learn a lot about cybersecurity. Remember, there's a lot of bad things that could happen to you out there. Viruses is not the only thing. You have to always be vigilant. You have to always pay attention. Always think like a hacker. How can a hacker access your system? And hopefully you'll be safe. Thank you all for attending. I would like to thank SPE. I would like to thank Nasser Abul Khail for his amazing help and support throughout this. He pushed me to do this, honestly, and helped me in the preparation a few days ago. And today he's been a lot of help. Let's move on to the questions. So the first question is, what would be the first, let me move it to answer live. What would be the first recommended response when someone has been a victim to a malicious cyber activity? That's a very good question, honestly. When the first thing that you want to do is change your passwords, all of your passwords, regardless if it's part of the system that was hacked or not. Always change your passwords. That's the first thing that you should do. Practice good cybersecurity, basically vigilance. Enable two-factor authentication. Wipe your computer, basically format it and start over. That's when your backup would come in handy. Okay, for quantum computers might be the worst thing to happen to encryption. What you're saying, basically, I read an article a few weeks ago. When quantum computers are available to everyone, it would reduce the time of decryption from what we have today, basically 3 trillion years, to less than an hour? So that's a really good question. Is there a preferred way to use hotel Wi-Fi if you are staying for a week to conduct business? Okay, so you can use a paid VPN. If you use a paid VPN that you trust, most probably you'll be able to conduct your business. You can be able to access the systems that you want to access. What VPN does, it encrypts your password, provided that you trust the VPN provider. Basically, you want to check his audit. They hire a third party to basically audit their logs to ensure that they're not logging users' information. The other thing that you can do is you can use the Wi-Fi for non-essential information and use basically 4G or 5G connectivity, basically cellular connectivity when you want to do important or critical business that you don't want anyone to look at. So the third question is airplane Wi-Fi considered public or private? It's public Wi-Fi. Any Wi-Fi that anyone can connect to it is public. I don't think airplane Wi-Fi is good enough to actually do anything on it, but yeah, just pay extra vigilance when you're using basically any public Wi-Fi. So this question is, which firewall do you recommend? There's a lot of good firewalls out there. Honestly speaking, Windows firewall is good enough if you're using Windows. Also, Mac has a similar solution. You just don't change the configuration. When you connect, if you connect to a public network and the system prompts you to basically pick if it's a public or private network, it's a public network, select public network. The firewall configuration changes between a private and a public network. There's a number of other firewalls out there. Komodo has a good one. Norton has also a very good one. I'm not a high profile. Why would a hacker want to hack my phone? That's actually true. However, sometimes script kiddies just do it for fun. They're not targeting someone basically high profile, but you're on their way. The other thing is basically sometimes if you want to catch a big fish, you have to catch a small fish and then use it as a bait. You might be that basically, I don't want to offend you, but you're anonymous. You might be this smaller fish. Basically, they say that users are the weakest link in cybersecurity process, and this is clearly being taken advantage via social engineering. How would the Cyberculture be used to combat such a vulnerability? What I said is basically in Reconnaissance, where users are basically, he's trying to gather information. This is where people come as a target. And then later on, when they try to basically send the payload across. The idea is going back to the slide with the matrix, is having basically the steps where humans are involved or people are involved, and ensuring that these are addressed. Honestly speaking, till this day, there is basically awareness, training, and basically sending them emails every now and then to check if they would fail phishing or not. There's a lot of tools that would go around phishing. However, there is no silver bullet that would solve the social engineering vulnerability. What about browsers that ask for remembering the password? It depends on the way they encrypt it. There's a lot of good tools out there. Dashline is one of them. Password One is another example. What I like about them, as an example, Dashline, if you look at Dashline, you don't have to go to have I been pwned. The moment your account is found on a list, the Dashline would notify you. The other thing is they encrypt your password using a password that you add. So basically, the problem here is if you lose the password, there's no way of getting back the other password. So if you lose the master password, that's it. What this tells us is there's no way that they will be able to access your passwords. And even if a hacker was able to get the record, it will be extremely difficult for him to access all the passwords. Oh, the name of the book is The Art of Invisibility. It's by Kevin Mitnick. It's actually a very interesting read. He has a number of other books, but this one is the signed book, so this is why I got it here. So as I said, if you use a secure, basically password management system such as Dashline, the password is encrypted on your phone. That's why when you want to use it, it asks you for the master password. This is how they protect your password from malicious users. Okay, so would use the same strong password, multiple websites increase my chance of being hacked? Yes, because the moment, the first thing that they would do, let's go back to my Netflix example. So I have the email and I have the password. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, your email, and try to use the same password. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, basically, I just lost a couple of minutes. So yes, it's highly recommended to use different passwords. As I said, if you use different passwords, strong passwords, and also turn on two-factor authentication, and you use a password management system such as 1Password or Dashline, you should be able to use different strong passwords for each and every system. A question from our the chair of student outreach, Sabal Maghlouth, is my phone hotspot safe? Yes, if you use, basically when you configure your hotspot, you have to create a password. Create this password, make sure that it's not easily guessable, and monitor your phone, because if you're the only person connecting to your hotspot, you're the only person connecting to your hotspot. If it tells you there are 2 people connecting to your hotspot, there's someone that was able to access your hotspot without your permission. Any piece of advice to junior SOC analysts? Honestly speaking, it's not easy being in security operations. It's extremely challenging. It's extremely time consuming. And I have a lot of respect to my team, especially the junior SOC analysts. I have a number of them that are extremely capable. The way that they're doing it is they're challenging themselves. One example, I don't want to say names, but one example comes into mind. I'm always surprised by the level that he takes every challenge to. He's been with us for a year now, almost, and the knowledge that he has about security nowadays is extremely impressive. Every email that he sends, every basically fix that he does, every case that he investigates is like music to me. It's beautiful. One thing that I noticed he's doing is he's always going online. He's always reading, always challenging himself, always trying to find new courses to take, new certificates to take. And there's no such thing as you have enough knowledge in security, because the knowledge that I had 2 years ago is obsolete today. 2 years ago, firewalls were a okay security tool. Nowadays, they're almost obsolete. Basically, there are next generation firewalls that are out there that make our legacy firewalls look like routers. Go to eLearn Security. They have a lot of good courses. there. Download the tools that I shared with you and keep up with cybersecurity attacks. There's a lot of good resources online. There's a lot of good resources on Twitter. Twitter is an amazing source for threat intelligence. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email or hit me on Twitter. My handle is @mynerdfriend. How secure Apple Pay and Google Pay? They're two different technologies. So far, Apple Pay has passed the test of time. Google Pay uses a similar technology to what we use in our contactless cards. It's near field communication. Also, Apple uses it, but Google, basically, you're charging the card directly. With Apple, what they're doing is they're charging your account, and your account is linked to a card, and then so your transactions are being done by Apple, not by the basically merchant. But so far, both of them are pretty secure. Okay, how easy is it to learn to become a good hacker? Are there many good hackers? Abdulrahman. Okay. I think that's my nephew, but I'm not sure. Actually, thank you for the question. At your age, it's not difficult. You still have a lot of time to learn. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time. But you need to understand systems. You need to understand how operating system works. You need to understand how application works. And this takes a lot of brain power. And I'm sure you have a lot of this. But there's a lot of good hackers out there. In Twitter, at least, I follow hundreds of them that are extremely impressive. And both males and females. They're extremely good. They do hacking, web application hacking, operating system hacking, and even hardware hacking. 2 years ago in DEF CON, there was a challenge to hack a car. Basically, they were trying to hack Ford. And there's a lot of people that were able and capable to do it. So to answer your question, it takes time, it takes work, it takes a lot of work. You need to work a lot. You need to read a lot. You have to understand systems. And I know you understand the applications by now, but for systems, it would take a bit time. And most importantly, you have to be basically enthusiastic about hacking, enthusiastic about cybersecurity. And I hope when you say a good hacker, you mean an ethical hacker, not a good non-ethical hacker. Hey, do you think cybersecurity needs to be a priority in the education sectors, and why? Honestly speaking, it's not. It should be a priority. It's something that affects each and every one of us. There's no one that I know, at least under the age of 20, that doesn't use the internet. Kids nowadays, 2 or 3 years old, they have iPads and they access the internet. I'm not saying to teach a 2-year-old how to about cybersecurity. However, people need to learn more and more about cybersecurity. There's a lot of good resources out there. Google has a number of publicly available cybersecurity awareness websites that you can basically log in and share with your family. But yes, I think cybersecurity needs to be a priority. As I said, one of the questions were people are the weakest link. If you have one person that doesn't understand cybersecurity, he can cause a massive incident in that would affect everyone around him. And that, I guess, is the last question. Okay, thank you so much. Eid Mubarak in advance. It's a few days ago. And I hope you and your family are safe. Inshallah, this Eid is going to be a bit different. But you can use Zoom, you can use Google Meets, you can use WhatsApp, Snapchat, FaceTime, and talk to your relatives, talk to your loved ones, and be thankful for being safe. And finally, I would like to thank you for joining us today. I'm not sure if Nasser has something to say, but Nasser?
Thank you, Abdulrahman. Very informative. I thought we lost you for a minute there when you're trying to simulate a hack that you hacked yourself and got disconnected. I hope you everyone enjoyed this presentation. This is going to be the last one for Ramadan as we break for Eid. And then we'll be resuming our webinar series after Eid, bi'idhnillah. Make sure to follow us on SPE_KSA on Twitter. You will find more resources about this webinar as well as the previous ones. That's about it. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.